I'll often get CC'd into emails that my mum has written to our local member. It's
I
amazing.
love that.
It's great.
That is
she also
the
tweets
best.
at them too. She tweets at them too. It's great.
Oh, I'm going to find that Twitter account. Hi, you're listening to Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems.
Big problems, casual conversations.
And man, do we have casual conversations for you this week. I feel like it's less casual this week. Nah, it's still casual, but definitely big problems.
Big problems for sure.
I want to stress these problems occurred in the past because we recorded this a while back.
Like maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah, we've been sitting on it for a while because it's a good one. And I feel like it's relevant now with the amount of political news this week is insane. I don't know if we want to get into it all, but we basically have 3 of the main people in Parliament have resigned, and there's ICAC, corruption scandals and all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
It would have been good to, maybe we should talk to Paris again, I don't know, but...
We'll do another episode all about what's happened this week, but just so that you know why we don't talk about anything that's happened this week in the episode, it's because it was recorded at least a month or 2 ago.
You could probably date it by some of the topics, but it's still a great episode and we still go into so many great topics. But before that, how was your week this week?
My week was good. It's mid-sem break for me, which was nice. I spent most of the week catching up on assignments, and then I took this long weekend off, like pretty much completely off.
How do you take a weekend off in the pandemic?
Well, I went on a picnic on Saturday, and then I watched Harry Potter instead of doing work, and then I went on a picnic on Sunday and watched TV and just didn't think about uni work, which was great. But we went on a picnic together. Wow.
I was going to say, that's why I was like, oh my God, did you? Because I was on one of those picnics.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant.
It was so nice.
It was so nice, yeah.
Just sat in a park for 5 hours, 4 hours. I don't even know how long it was.
And when we were there as well, it was the day of the NRL grand final, and there were other groups of people there as well.
Yeah, there was a group with a TV and a generator.
They had literally brought a generator to power their TV to watch the game out in the middle of the park because we're not allowed people over to our house. So I thought that was really creative.
Iconic.
Taking initiative. Yeah, iconic, honestly. Today I went out to I went on a bushwalk. A friend was like, hey, yeah, let's go on a bushwalk. I was like, okay, no worries. And then this morning, maybe you should take lunch. I was like, okay, I was just going to bring water. And then we get to his house and he's going, okay, do you fit in this harness? I'm like, what kind of bushwalk is this?
What did you go do?
We did abseiling, and it was the
nice.
best. It was so much fun. We had a great time. I have some videos. Maybe I can post a photo this week.
I love abseiling. As soon as I'm in a harness, any fear goes away. I love abseiling. We used to abseil in my backyard.
Secure.
Yeah. It's just the best. Abseiling is so fun. So I'm jealous. Where did you even go?
So it was out Glenorrey way. Maybe I shouldn't dox myself, but it was in a rural area out in the bush. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm really glad we did it. Yeah, it was so weird. It was I looked over the cliff and it was a terrifying distance, but I felt completely fine because I was wearing harness.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm safe.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Is that the highlight of your week?
Yeah, I think it is. It was great to get out in the sun. It's so warm today as well. Oh, also the picnic. No, these I have 2 highlights.
Social interaction.
Yes, social interaction. But I was going to say, speaking of feeling safe, is that a good segue?
Absolutely not, but roll with it. We never have
I'm
good
so
segues.
glad to have this guest with us today. It was such we've been wanting to talk to her for so long because I love these chats and I talk about it in the episode how much I love talking with her. So let's get straight into it, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. Please welcome to the podcast, Paris.
Hey, Paris. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I feel very honoured.
I've been looking forward to this episode because I always love our chats, love chatting with you at whatever event, normally family events that we get together at.
Yeah.
Weddings and the like. And yeah, I love...
Your name has been on our list for a couple seasons.
Yeah, it has actually.
I love that. Thank you. Oh, thank you. No, I love our chats too. I'm very keen.
Yeah, excited. And yeah, so we should probably introduce you to our audience, a little bit about yourself. Emily asked me before what you do for work, and I said you coordinate volunteers. Is that right?
Sort of, yeah. So I'm a project officer in community development. I work in the not-for-profit sector for a not-for-profit organisation, and I work with adult volunteers, but I also get to work with young people too, which is really cool, seeing little girls and young women grow into themselves.
I feel like I almost demeaned the profession because I could never repeat that like that. And I was like, you coordinate volunteers. Like,
it's very close to that.
But no.
I was just going to ask, how did you sort of get into that? Is that kind of, did you study something that led you there, or is it, how did you get into it?
Not really. I kind of fell into it. So I've worked in the not-for-profit sector for the last few years, the last 3 or 4 years. And I was previously working at an advocacy organisation, and I'd never really worked with young people before, but through that kind of found that I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I actually got approached by a recruiter for this role, and
like headhunted?
Everything. I don't know if I was like headhunted, but I don't really know kind of how they reached out to me. I think I'd given my resume to them like previously, and yeah, so they approached me for it, and it all kind of fell into place. It's based in the Northwest Sydney area, so I'm around the area that I grew up in, and working with girls and young women in an advocacy organisation, and an organisation that empowers women and girls, and yeah, right up my alley.
Nice.
That's awesome. What is another example of an advocacy organisation? Because I don't know what that means.
So the one that I previously worked at was an advocacy organisation for young people in out-of-home care. So basically it's an organisation that advocates for that particular group of people,
right,
in a particular area. So we would work in consultation with young people who'd been through the out-of-home care system, and then basically advocate on behalf of them for government to change legislation, to help provide them with different resources and all of that kind of stuff.
Like a normal person lobbyist.
Yeah, kind of. Like, yeah, but an organisation that does that all together.
Yeah, sick. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, we've been in lockdown for a while now. As of this recording, it's been something like 5 weeks, and we've been having updates.
I think this is week 4.
Oh my God, only week 4?
I know, like only week 4, with another week confirmed still to come. Not sure when this episode is coming out, but that's where we're up to, and that's why we all sound kind of defeated.
And looking at our daily numbers, I cannot believe it's going to last only one more week. It is just getting worse.
No.
Yeah. I don't understand how it's like. I can't fathom how it's still going up.
Yeah, like I literally have been at home.
Yeah.
Like I think the only place I've been is Woolworths, and that was once.
Yeah, like I've gone to visit my partner, but I haven't even gone to Woolworths because my mum has had her first vaccination, so she goes to do all of the grocery shopping.
I don't like. I'll read the locations, and people are like at Kmart and all these places. I'm like,
I thought they were closed.
Sorry.
Yeah. What are you doing? What is essential about Kmart? Pool noodles? Like, what do they sell? Why are you there? Yeah,
just get it delivered.
What exactly?
And we were going to talk about working from home and stuff first, but it's already starting to get political, which is another problem. But yeah, we can talk about how this lockdown has affected us. Like, yeah, I cannot believe it's been 5 weeks. I've been going insane. And I love getting Snapchats from you, and it's weirdly, like, it's so weird how often I'm doing either the exact same thing or sitting in the exact same seat. Like,
wait, give an example.
Okay, I hope you don't mind. I don't remember what one of them was, but it was something about, I don't know. I just remember like relating to it because I was sitting here. I hadn't showered in like 2 days, and I was feeling particularly disheveled. And you sent something to me of, I don't know. I don't remember exactly what you said.
Yeah, I think it was like Friday afternoon. It was like 4:30, and I hadn't showered, and I think I was about ready to drink. Like it was.
I think that's what it was. And I was sitting here with 2 empty beer bottles because I was already on it.
Yeah.
Not during. It might have been during work. I'll say it.
I mean,
it was a Friday afternoon. It was 3 p.m. or something that I wasn't drinking all day, but I just had like empty beer bottles sitting here. I hadn't showered, and you sent me that Snapchat, and I went, "Girl, same."
Literally the same. I know. It's so funny.
Yeah. Have you felt that way at all? I know that you haven't been working from home necessarily, but you've been trapped.
Yeah. I mean, I finished winter term last week. So this week and next week I have absolutely nothing. Like I'm unemployed. I don't even have uni to keep me going, and I just have nothing going on. I almost wish that I had like a job to do because I have no purpose. I'm like, Mum said to me last night, she's like, don't stay up all night watching Gilmore Girls. I'm like, why?
Yeah, 100%.
What else have I got to do? What am I going to miss if I sleep in all morning? Like,
you should test how your sleep cycle goes if you just do what you want. I've been dying to try that for the longest time. Like, just stay up as late as I want to like 5 a.m. sleep and just see what happens to my sleep cycle. Will it auto-regulate and I'll come back around? Like,
this is not an experiment that I'm interested in. Mostly because I know I'll have to come back to normal at some point. You know, life will return. I start uni again in like beginning of August, which thank goodness I have something to do.
I reckon I could cycle back around like 2 separate sleep cycles by then. Like, because I keep waking up later and later and going to bed later and later. I reckon I could do 2 laps.
Yeah. My thing is, I have like there is one thing and one thing only that gets me out of bed in the morning, and it's my blood sugar. Because by about 10 o'clock, my blood sugar starts to drop super, super low, and I need to get up and have breakfast or I won't make it out of bed.
Yeah.
So that's at least something. You know, we all need to have our reasons to get up in the morning. My blood sugar is one of them. But yeah, no, I'm struggling. I was going to say, back on the topic of like not showering and all that stuff, Paris, you really look put together today, and I haven't washed my hair in like 5 days. You look clean. Well done.
I am 90% dry shampoo right now.
Nice.
It's and I literally had a shower at 5 p.m. because I got up at 8:59 to start work.
Yes!
At 9 a.m.
That's the way. Yeah. That's exactly what I did today. And oh man, I used to start work at 8 a.m. Now I just 9 a.m. is good enough, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
This morning 8 a.m. works when you want to beat traffic, but there's no point otherwise.
Yeah, I literally roll out of my bed and walk downstairs and, hello, I'm at work.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah, it used to be that my desk was actually physically in my room, and that was really bad for my mental health. Like, it was just terrible space to be in. My bed was right there. Like, I literally took no steps to get into the office. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. I would force myself to leave the room and come back, but yeah, no, it's much better having a separate space for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like we have to relearn all this crap that we did for last year's lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like we never came out of it. Like,
I've gotten back into Animal Crossing. I overcame my hurdle of being too overwhelmed about terraforming my island, and now we're all in it. It's a great time.
Yeah. I'm back on Minecraft at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just stuck on my screen like all day. That's all I do.
Yeah, I'm back on watching TV and then also watching a separate thing on my phone because couldn't possibly just watch one thing at a time.
Yeah. What would a pandemic be like if we didn't have our screens? Like,
I keep thinking, what would it be like if like we were in the plague? Like, how would we have survived? We would have just got it and died, right? Like,
I mean, probably.
Yeah, end it all. Just end it for me. Yeah, please. Yeah, that's my internet went down the other day. I've had power outages recently. The internet outage was far worse. I couldn't do anything. And like nothing. I was like, I needed to text my... Oh, sorry, it wasn't even a whole internet. It was just communications went down. Phone line was dead. Internet was dead. So Wi-Fi, cellular, everything was down for like half an hour. And I work for the internet service provider. And so I'm working from home for the internet service provider. And I was like, I'll just text my boss and let him know. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh my God. Like I had no options to communicate with anyone. No. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, if I can't do anything, fuck it. I'll scroll. No, I won't. No, I'll go on. Oh, shit. Like, there's nothing I could do. Nothing. I was like, no, there's got to be something I can do. Like, we didn't used to have the internet. Like, I could not think of a thing. For the half an hour, I was just like pacing. Yeah.
It's
what?
Yeah, it's sad.
I remember
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
First lockdown last year, the first week of lockdown, like full hard lockdown, my house had 2 different blackouts for like the whole night. So we had like candles going and like we were like, okay, what do we do? And we started playing board games. But it was just like now, if that happened to us now, I would be like, I have played board games as much as one human being can handle board games. Like I can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only thing that Anthony, my husband, and I have been able to play is this tiny little Kmart version of Trouble. And I swear to God, it's like
does it have the little pop dice in it?
Yes, but it's like this tiny little dome.
Oh,
and
man.
There's only so much Trouble you can play.
Yeah. Well, even like I've been really grateful that Will, my partner, can come and visit, because otherwise there's not many 3-person board games, and it's just me, my brother, and my mum at the moment.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we can't even play board games because we don't have a 4th player.
Yeah.
So it's been good that he can come and visit, because then we have a 4th player and I can actually play them.
It's annoying how many 3-player games there just aren't. Like, even cards. It's so annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. 3 is like a really hard number.
If any
I didn't
ever
even realise that.
No, if any
That's so
ever of our
annoying.
friends ever bail on some kind of like game night or something, it's like, well, fuck. Like, we can't do
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. 3 is also a very difficult number if you are going to Yumcha, because everything is always in 4s.
True.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I always just like...
I'm sad that I can't go to Yumcha. That is why it's on my mind.
It's like a
Very
weekly
fair.
event or something.
I wish.
Oh, man. Yeah. But so why are we in this fucking lockdown?
Wow.
Should we get into
Let's
that?
jump right in.
I'm keen because I feel like for a lot of us in New South Wales, in Australia, we have been at 11 a.m. every day, just been watching the Premier's press conference, and every day I get a little more frustrated by the same
Yes.
answers and the same numbers. Like, I look at the graphs and all the statistics and stuff, and it's all the same every day, and I'm like, what are they doing? Why is nothing else happening? If you're going to keep us in this state, like, lock us down harder, please. I think everyone is craving that. Everyone wants to be out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we in this? But like, I haven't left the house in 5 weeks. So what are they doing? You know?
And this constant message of, yeah, we won't get out of this until we're all vaccinated, and you guys should get vaccinated. Like, I want to, please vaccinate me. Please vaccinate me.
The rhetoric of like, I'm seeing everywhere on my Instagram, like polls of like young people asking young people, like, are you going to get vaccinated? Like, this whole rhetoric of like pushing young people to consider it. Like, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Like, I want the vaccine. I can't get it yet. I've been booked in for August for 3 months. Like, it is not my choice that I haven't been vaccinated yet. And
I know.
people keep pushing like it is our choice. And like, I haven't decided to get it.
And those ads they came out with was like a slap in the face to young people.
I mean, how did that get approved by any sort of marketing team? I don't know.
Basically, our
shocking.
Prime Minister's name and affectionate name is Scotty from marketing. It's not an affectionate name. It's really a slam, because he's a white man that fell up so high that he became the leader of the country. That's literally the story of Scott Morrison.
Maybe that'll happen to you, Sam. You just keep falling up the ranks.
I mean,
it's possible. Look at my
every
skin.
power to you.
Yeah. But he is famously reactive. And anyway, he started in Tourism Australia, and now they released this ad campaign, and it's the biggest flop. It was this woman in distress in a hospital, and it was to scare people into getting vaccinated, and it did not go. Like, I don't think it played well to anyone.
No. And it's not even just the fact that that was just distressing to watch in general, but I have a lot of like friends and family who are nurses, and seeing their response to it, they were like, we would never, ever, ever let a patient suffer like that. Yeah. So it was just like so unrealistic in that sense. Like, yes.
It just hit like, everybody in the face.
Horrible. Like, yes, COVID is a real serious threat and you can get very ill from it, but the pushing young people and that the focus is on young people when we all want to get vaccinated. Like,
there's just literally no supply and we don't have the option and we can't. Yeah, that's right. And so it was like, I'm sorry, but we're trying to do our part. You're trying to scare us. And not only that, using that kind of like that inaccurate footage of someone experiencing that is only fuel to anti-vaxxers' fire.
Absolutely.
Like, it's literally just going to push them further back into that corner. Like, what was the intention?
I know.
Well, I mean, you can see the intention is to scare and to put people like into like, but
I feel like the lockdown did a good enough job of that. Like, I feel like vaccinations have amped up since the lockdown, just because of, you know, it putting the pressure on a little bit more. You know, we didn't need an ad that was that distressing.
No, I think I'm scared enough. Like, I don't really understand. It's very typical of this particular government, but also the Liberal government in general, is that's kind of scare tactic way of approaching things. And I just don't get it. It feels so out of touch. And it was what a huge disaster, honestly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm glad we touched on that ad campaign because that really made my blood boil. It made me very angry. A lot of things.
What do you think? Sorry, Sam. What do you think about the Premier wars going on?
Oh my!
Get over yourselves. No one cares.
Yeah,
everyone is suffering. You were saying, Emily, that for the next 2 weeks you don't have anything to do. Like, my husband is a massage therapist with a lot of sports teams, and none of them are in Sydney because they've all had to travel out and follow the different paths of where the virus is the least active. And he hasn't worked for this whole time. And it's awful. Like, everyone here is suffering. Major cities around our country are locked down. Almost our whole country is currently locked down. And just focus on that. No one gives a shit if you're trying to out-ego each other. It's just...
This is the biggest gripe that I've had with the federal response is, they kind of went, all right, the states, you can do it. You have more experience. And, in a lot of ways they do, but the way that they were so divisive about it and breaking up the states into, are you Liberal, are you Labor? That approach has just made the whole country so divided. And I also want to put a lot of the responsibility for this on the media, because every single presser every morning to both Victoria and New South Wales, I hear the same questions of how do you respond to this statement from this Premier? And it's never relevant to that state. It's always the media trying to get clicks. And that's a systemic issue too, because it's that's what they need to do in order to stay alive.
Yeah. For sure.
It's so frustrating. Yeah. Because I think a lot of the time the premiers are trying to say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about my state. Please don't ask me about that." And then eventually, they get a rise out of them.
Yeah, backed into it and forced to talk about it. Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of the media press, I also want to ask you about there was a good moment this week where because Scott Morrison, and to our listeners, this is going to be mostly just us talking about Australian politics. So I hope you enjoy get something out of this.
I'm actually going to get my blanket.
But I'll try to provide a bit of context for the listeners, to the listeners. But basically, our Prime Minister has been a little bit invisible throughout the week, and everything's been exploding in the country. All the viruses, all the lockdowns are getting more intense. The numbers are getting worse, and we haven't seen or heard from the leader of the country in a bit. And the media, the people are starting to get more and more frustrated. And a journalist gave context to the Prime Minister and then asked, you are starting to look more like an absent leader. Is this true? And his response was simply no. and moving on. And then he pointed to the next journalist. And it was like, ooh, that didn't look good at all.
No.
And I was like, where have you been, bro? What are you doing?
Yeah.
He can't say anything. He has nothing to say.
Okay, this is a dumb Emily question. This is the same Prime Minister who ran to Hawaii during the bushfires?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Strong leadership from him.
Iconic.
And I actually got into a heated... I've been avoiding doing this because it makes no sense to argue in TikTok comments or Reddit threads, particularly. But Reddit threads are a bit better, but it's still toxic as shit to talk about politics because it's super short form and it inspires breaking down arguments into black and white issues. It's impossible to have a real argument. But I had a few drinks and I was really angry because I'm trapped.
Shocker.
Oh, man, I was so angry. And he was like, it was on an MP's TikTok account. And he goes, he was basically blaming Scott Morrison. This is the vaccine rollout is Morrison's responsibility. He was just speaking truths, quarantine is a federal constitutional responsibility. Saying these are the federal responsibilities. Where's the Prime Minister? What's he doing? Good questions to ask from an opposition. And then there were people in the comments saying it's not his job to do that. It's the state's job. Stop pointing the finger in the wrong place. And I'm like, why are you defending why are you defending this man? Like, he's doing nothing for you, mate. Like,
I know.
I got so angry, and I was like, no, it is his fault. We should be pointing he's the leader of the, like, this idea of leadership. Like, are you not supposed to take accountability in a crisis? Are you like, what does leadership mean to some people? Because,
I know. Yeah. It's so interesting to watch, because isn't that the whole point? Like, this week in particular, actually, it's been really interesting to see a lot of people in the media ask him if he's sorry for the vaccine rollout.
Will not say it.
No, and it's so interesting. I think that there is this kind of fallacy around leadership that you shouldn't ever be apologetic, particularly in political leadership.
And I think men in general refuse to take responsibility and accountability. But I think he's learnt this from Trump, and how Trump managed to just stay out of,
No one should learn anything from Trump ever.
No,
but I mean, Scott Morrison is very, very image and perception focused. He's very reactive when it comes to issues, and I think, very interesting to see the way that he works as a prime minister is very image and very, very message focused, and not very action focused.
Definitely
which is the most frustrating. So now that there are actual consequences from his inaction, we're starting to see drops in the polls, which is the first time since he took office.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. And I think, but I was actually listening to your episode with Jess about careers, and I was thinking about it, how she was talking about how to be a manager and that kind of stuff. And it had just, like, I was listening to it as I was reading something about Scott Morrison refusing to apologize. And I just think that's so, that concept is so interesting to me, because I feel like as a human being, the only thing you ever want from someone else when you've experienced some kind of wrongdoing by them is for them to acknowledge it. You want to feel heard. You want them to acknowledge that they've done something and to apologize. And that's, I mean, fundamentally what we all want. And I just don't understand how you could expect a leader to never apologize. Like, isn't that?
Yeah, even from a perception-based thing, if Scott is fully perception-based, you would think to humanize himself in the media, in the eyes of the public, you would want him to say, look, I understand this situation is, and his other argument being, this was never the plan. We in any plan, we were never going to be vaccinated by now. And I was like, why not? What was the plan, mate? Why didn't you have a plan? This is the whole point.
Countries far larger than us are vaccinated. We're the last in the OECD. Like, it could have been the plan. Why was it not the plan?
I think the motto of this government should be last on the OECD rankings. On everything. Economy, bloody health, education. We have slipped and slid all the way down to the bottom of those rankings.
Yeah.
But isn't it so interesting? Because, like, this time last year, I felt like we were doing the best.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we
up
were
until
really,
recently.
Yeah.
And
up until this lockdown, up until Delta, basically.
And I feel like we were perceived like that too, like externally.
It was funny
and
how...
I kind of, not being super involved in politics myself, I rationalised the fact that we weren't particularly vaccine heavy early on, because I was like, okay, but we're doing fine. Like, give the vaccine to the countries that need it more.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's us. We need it. Like, and I just don't understand how we fell so far.
I know. It's so interesting. Yeah. And I think, like, a lot of like overseas businesses were moved to here as well, particularly like the Hollywood business. So lots of films were moved to here to film because we were handling it so well. And it's just taken such a nosedive. And it's crazy to hear the plans from other governments around the world and their plans for vaccinations, and how ours is just, we've got nothing. We don't have any future plans either. Like, it's not even just the now, it's that there hasn't been any pre-planning for booster vaccines or anything like that. So it's just, it's really set us on the back foot, and it's put us all in this position now.
It's very frustrating.
Very frustrating.
Yeah, I there was another thing that came up a few weeks ago that I wanted to ask you about, and that was one of our previous prime ministers from the now opposition, Kevin Rudd. You know what I'm going to talk about. Emily, did you hear about this?
That he called Pfizer?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, there were some concerned businessmen who will remain unnamed, but apparently Malcolm Turnbull, who is actually from the Liberal Party, who is the same party as our current Prime Minister, corroborates. And, so there's people, this seems very credible, that there were some prominent businessmen from the country who were thinking, oh my God, what is going on? Kev, mate, can you please go and talk to Pfizer?
Kevin Rudd is a previous Prime Minister.
Yeah, we've had 40 Prime Ministers in the past 10 years.
Yeah, we've had him twice.
Kevin Rudd, though, prominent diplomat, does he work in the United Nations now? He speaks Mandarin. He's a very impressive man in general. Very good lobbyist, very good, diplomat in general. So they got Kevin Rudd to say, hey, can you please go speak to the Pfizer execs? So he did, and then miraculously a week later, all of a sudden our shipment's been up months ahead of schedule. And then Scott Morrison comes out bragging about how he did this, and apparently he never spoke to Pfizer. And
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
My favorite take on this has got to be the Batuta calling Kevin Rudd Grandpa Kev.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing. The nation's grandfather.
There was an article where they said Scott Morrison came home to read his daughters a bedtime story, but turns out Kev had already done it.
Oh, man.
Oh, mate.
It's
also just other countries, if you don't have the Batuta Advocate, you're missing out.
Oh, it's truly
It's basically a satirical
The Onion.
news
The Onion,
publication.
yeah.
It's like a regional Australian version of The Onion.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great. They've got
so
excellent
great.
takes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't even talk about this, but how the reason I wanted to get you on here and talk about all these current events, I love having these conversations with you, is because originally the very first time that I ever started hearing about politics was way back when, because we grew up across the street from each other, and so we were often in carpools and things going around to school and back. I remember you were just ranting about a political issue at the time. It was about Tony Abbott. I'm going to say that.
Classic.
Yeah, and I just remember being like, who the hell is Tony Abbott? What is this? There was a prime minister. Was he the prime minister yet? I don't even know. I didn't know. I was completely politically disengaged before this, and since then I've been pretty passionate about politics. And so, yeah, I credit you with getting me into it. And I want to know about how you originally got into it, and how did you start looking into Tony Abbott? How'd that happen for you?
Well, first of all, thank you, because truly that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, that my hatred of a certain political figure got you into politics. I love that. But I guess a lot of it stemmed from my family. So growing up with two pretty politically engaged parents. So I definitely grew up in that environment. My dad is a classic bleeding heart. He is very empathetic to a lot of social causes, and my mum has always been super politically active. She would volunteer at polling places for elections, and so I've always kind of grown up in that environment, and my my interest in Tony Abbott in particular probably stemmed from my mum. I remember one of the first things, he may have been opposition leader, not prime minister yet. And
because I was going to say, famously, he is the recipient of the greatest speech of all time.
Literally printed out right behind me.
We should post that. Can we post that on our Instagram?
Yeah.
Because I love that. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, so I do have Julia Gillard's misogyny speech printed out and framed behind me on my wall of my living room.
Oh,
but yeah, so I think he was opposition leader at the time, and
him smirking while he took that just made that speech drive home that point so clearly. It was just such a good moment.
I truly, sometimes I'll just listen to it for inspiration.
Such a despicable man.
Just a real
For our international
misogynist
listeners, the image is disgusting man wearing Speedos.
Yes. Little alien bird man. Yeah.
You know what, though? I have to say, because my perception of him was entirely shaped around his political endeavours, and I could not agree less with anything he ever said in Parliament House. Outside Parliament House, he was a firefighter. He was part of the surf flight. Like, he actually had a fairly admirable community presence.
Yeah.
Which after him being a prime minister and after him having, I was like, oh, what? Why did I? Yeah.
I remember
bizarre.
hearing when ScoMo was in Hawaii during the bushfires and Tony Abbott was, on the front lines helping fight the bushfires. I was like,
I remember when Tony Abbott was my most hated politician, and now, and it feels like it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
Our current Prime Minister held a lump of coal in Parliament House when talking about climate. And he was elected for it. It just
it's
makes...
a real time. But yeah, so Tony Abbott...
back to the original question. How'd you get into politics? So you've inspired me so strongly.
He is does have those good relationships in community. He also, in his political career, was quite involved in Indigenous affairs as well, in a relatively positive way. Some not positive, but I mean...
Uncle Tony X?
Yeah.
From Batuta Advocate?
Yeah, classic. But... yeah, so I remember my mum talking about him, and she'd actually written to the newspaper about him in the early 2000s. Classic mum move, but also live your life. That's actually wonderful.
That's awesome.
Write to your local members, do all that you can. I'll often get CC'd into emails that my mum has written to our local member. It's amazing.
I love that.
It's great.
That is
she also
the
tweets
best.
at them too. She tweets at them too. It's great.
Oh, I'm going to find that Twitter account. Can I follow? Would it be weird if I followed your mum on Twitter?
No, she'd love it.
Yeah.
She'd love it.
I'm excited.
Give her an audience. She deserves it.
Absolutely. Can we retweet from the podcast? Okay, sorry, no. It might be weird.
But yeah, I remember talking to her about him and what he had done when he was health minister, when the Liberal government was in power.
Under John Howard?
He was the Minister for Health under when the RU486 abortion pill was banned. It was regulated solely by the health minister at the time. They wrote it into legislation. This was something that was sneakily done in a trade-off, in a political trade-off, so a woman's right to abortion was solely dependent on who the health minister was at the time. So she had written to the newspaper about something. He'd written an opinion piece where he'd found these statistics on abortion rates in Australia because it is to some degree covered by Medicare, the procedure that you have. He'd put these statistics in to show how high the rates of abortion were in Australia. And what he'd actually done was conflated the data because the reference number for that particular procedure is also the same as the procedure you have after you miscarry. And so he had essentially lumped in all of these women who'd lost a baby by no choice of their own, and conflated that with people who'd made the active choice to terminate their pregnancy for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. Anyone can choose that. So my mum, who had a miscarriage years and years prior, wrote about that. She was very, very passionate about that. She is also pro-choice, was really that really impacted her. And he was just, flagrantly saying this information which was false. And he was obviously not pro-choice. And, that was I feel like that was the first conversation I really ever had with my mum about Tony Abbott, and is very indicative of his, treatment and beliefs around women. He didn't let his daughters get the cervical cancer vaccine, the HPV vaccine.
Oh my God.
When that was available. So that started to roll out when I was in high school. So he's got a nice history of controlling women's bodies and their right to their healthcare. So I think that was kind of the first conversation I ever remember having about him. But he really kind of took this form of the opposite of what I wanted in a prime minister. And I was very, very favourable, still am, of Julia Gillard. So he was opposition leader while she was prime minister, and he was horrible. He was flagrantly misogynistic and sexist, and
almost proud of the misogyny.
Yeah, and really fueled that
disgusting.
Fire. Yeah. It was the absolute just torture that she must have gone through. I remember actually thinking of it at the time that I don't know how I would have coped under the weight of that. Like every day there was something about the way that she looked, the way that she spoke. I still have people talk to me about that when I am talking to someone who's across the political divide from me, and I talk about how like what she did and how she was as a prime minister, and the only thing that they can say is that she talked weird. Like it's
negotiate.
I just no male leader that we've ever had has copped the shit that she copped, and they won't. Exactly, that's right.
Drives me nuts that people like Boris Johnson, the leader of Britain, is eccentric with his crazy fuck off hair. Mm-hmm. And if it boils my butt, because I honestly believe the majority of the time women are better leaders than men. I just have to. Every problem I've ever had at work has been it's never with women. It's like always a man with a fucking ego trying to control it. Like he's getting all emotional about it, but somehow women are emotional. I'm like, no, women understand their emotions, are able to regulate them, and can understand if that's interfering with a decision. Men can't do that.
Yeah.
And I know I'm generalizing massively, but I feel like men can cop this. We can take it, okay? Like we can take the criticism here.
I agree. I think men can cop it. Let's be real.
The problem is that when they can't, right? They get violent.
Well, yeah. Well, that's exactly right. It's
like that's the whole problem. Like they are way too emotional.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I think what started us talking about this a couple of weeks ago was I recommended to you the the documentary at the moment on ABC called Misrepresented, and it's all about our Australian female political leaders.
Please, everyone listening, go watch this. It is so good. Even international, it's really good.
It's fantastic. Yeah, you can watch it online. So Penny Wong talks about emotions in leadership. And, she was saying that same thing. So women are taught and girls are taught from a very young age to be in control of their emotions, to cry when they need to cry, to do all this kind of stuff, and they're very aware of the emotions that they're feeling. And the way that we raise boys is the opposite of that. We tell them to
hide them,
get up when they fall down, and hide your feelings. It's not manly to cry, and so when it comes to these really complex leadership decisions, women are very aware of how their emotions could impact their decision making, whereas men aren't, because they're not taught to do that.
Because like from a man's perspective, I think what's happening is they think, well, I'm not emotional because they bottle it all up. But that's actually the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You have so many emotions in there, man. You have no idea how they're affecting your decision-making skills. Also, the thing I had no idea about, Emily, did you know this? They have shitloads of booze in Parliament House.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that?
No.
Half the time they're drunk in there.
It's
what the
lot.
fuck?
Yeah.
Where did you find that out?
From this documentary, they talk about how often ministers sitting right next to them reek of alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was a parliamentary bar that members of parliament were able to access before there was a women's bathroom. There is I don't know if you've gotten up to that point in the documentary, Sam, but they talk about even not just in Parliament House, but in different council buildings and things like that. And I'm talking up until like the 70s and 80s. This isn't in 1900. There were no dedicated bathrooms.
Was my jaw just dropping.
Yeah.
The standards that these men are held, and I found, okay, even in my corporate environment, I started out in retail, and the standards that I was held to in retail is clock in and out with my fucking fingerprint for my break, and it has to be exactly half an hour, no more, right?
Yep.
You have to rock up on time. If it's 5 minutes late, you're going to get a stern talking to. As you move up through an organization, you find you have way less rules, everything's way more relaxed, and just imagine you get to the tippy top of that. You're fucking drinking booze like... I don't want to go down that path, but like just the standard that we hold to men in power is just the bar couldn't be lower, and it pisses me off when people, young people, anyone defends these people as if they shouldn't be accountable or it's not their job. God.
Yeah, I think particularly now. I mean, after the last few months where we've seen different women coming forward with their experience in Parliament House as women and the sexual assault that people have experienced and that people knew about and actively hid. And now the government has come out to say that a non-compulsory 1 hour seminar is what's going to really fix that issue within the walls of Parliament House. So, out of touch is the phrase that comes to mind.
Yeah. Can I ask your response to this? Because I'm not entirely sure how to respond, because I understand that this is so much more complex, but something that I've heard from men when you talk about, like, so they'll report on these stories of, sexual assault in Parliament. The girl will come forward, but it might be 4 years after the event or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And immediately anyone watching might dismiss that and go, how could, like, he grazed her leg 4 years ago and all of a sudden she's coming forward and accusing him now because he's in power or something. How would you respond to someone saying that?
I think that's a classic response.
Yeah.
And I just think that is so ignorant of the complexity of assault. There's so many bits and pieces that are attached to that. So if you're a young woman in a workplace and a superior person to you touches you inappropriately or says something inappropriately to you, there are so many consequences for if you say something about that. It's not as easy as just saying, hey, that's wrong. This didn't feel right and you shouldn't be doing that. That's inappropriate. I could lose my job if I say something. The burden of proof is on me, so no one's going to believe me. I'm just a young girl and these men are in their 40s and 50s and they're in these positions of power and no one's going to believe me. But also if I do say something, I've lost my job. I've lost my career progression and it's easier and safer for me and emotionally too to not say something because the burden of proof is on that person. It's re-traumatizing. So the more that you have to tell your story and the more people that you get pushback from is compounded trauma. So it's so complex and it really upsets me, that argument. I've experienced that. Like,
it seems
people have said that to me.
Dismissive.
Not about any experience I've had, but just in conversations.
It's the most common thing I've heard too, and I will come back and I'll say, well, I think it might be a little bit more complex than that. You understand the risk that they're taking on by accusing this incredibly powerful man of doing something like this, and they'll say, oh, they just want the attention or something. Like,
yeah.
Emily,
and
you
it's often not
as well. Like, you had something to say before too. Did you have?
Well, I saw this Instagram post the other day that was like, if you're ever in that situation, like, you could choose to, like, maybe the woman isn't telling the truth, but it's like, I'd prefer to back someone who's lying than back someone who's committing sexual assault. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's not true.
Yeah.
That's so dangerous though too, isn't it?
It is, but it's it is an interesting kind of thing where the benefit of the doubt is always given to this promising young man. I think that's the classic kind of trope. That this accusation could ruin him, and it's like, well,
the act of coming forward can ruin the career of the person doing the accusing, like the victim.
and the physical violence that they've experienced has ruined them. So, and I mean, I think but we can see anecdotally that it doesn't ruin them. Bill Cosby's out of jail on a technicality. It doesn't ruin them. These accusations don't ruin these men. And I mean, I'm talking broadly because obviously there are false reports. But one of the classic things actually, which is a useful thing to respond with if you do have someone say, oh, well, what about all these false reports, is that as a man, you're actually more likely to be raped than to be falsely accused of rape. So, it's a very, very low. And I think what's conflated as well is the statistic of false reporting with recanting. So a lot of time people will see that a woman has recanted her statement and she doesn't want to proceed any further. And people will conflate that with it being false.
Yeah,
that she was
100%.
that she wasn't telling the truth. And it's just not the case. It's just that the burden of proof is so high and the benefit of the doubt is on the accused. And I mean, that is how kind of the justice system works. They are given the benefit of the doubt, which is fair.
There's a reason for that too, yeah.
Exactly.
How can you prove something like that happened? Like,
part of the complication, I also feel like, is the defamation in Australia. Like, defamation is like one of the highest. I don't even know what words I'm saying, but it's super, super common in Australia to have defamation cases, and particularly like coming out of things like that. And the added complexity of having a defamation case thrown into that, because it again means that the person has to like prove that it happened to prove that they're not defamed. Like, anyway,
so it's really easy to defend against, essentially, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And once you've defended against the defamation case, you've won the other case. Like, it's just
And so essentially, the risk of accusing someone of something like this is just so high. There is no reason to do it unless it's happened, really. I mean,
particularly for very high profile cases. So, like we've seen, so with Brittany Higgins, the risk, it doesn't just stop after you've reported. It doesn't stop after you've made that decision of, you know what, the risks, like the benefit outweighs the risk. And I am going to do this because being in this position in this building isn't worth this. Like, you've made this, you've come all this far. You have to rationalize all of this stuff and make these huge complex decisions to get to that point. But in a high profile case, it doesn't end there, because once your name is out there, it's open season. It's anyone and everyone can say whatever they want. And particularly when you're a woman, it's always about your appearance. It's how could you have put yourself in that situation? And even the response from the Prime Minister on this was appalling. He had this big, long press conference where he talked about how these things shouldn't have happened and all of this kind of stuff. And not once did he mention that it was men causing this issue for women. He said that women get talked over, women get assaulted in the workplace. But all of these things are passively happening to women. But it's not. There are active perpetrators in this. And it's, so you, as the victim, and particularly as a female victim, and compound that with anything else, a gay female, anything, a person of colour, you can go from there. Everything's up for grabs, I guess, in terms of what you can say about this person. And the risks are so high for coming forward and telling your story that it's just not worth it sometimes. And I think I've seen a lot of kind of rhetoric around this with everyone being so proud of women coming forward. And I mean, absolutely. It gives me goosebumps every time I hear someone speak their truth and come forward and talk about their story. But I think as well, we really have to acknowledge that sometimes the risk outweighs the benefit. And
it's probably the majority of times, I would guess.
Yeah. And I think we do need to acknowledge that coming forward isn't always the best thing for that person. And
the trauma and the emotional tolerance, in my state right now, I could never do something like that.
No.
And even it doesn't even have to be like coming forward and like telling the authorities and stuff. Like there's this book, I don't want to say the book just because I don't want to add fuel to this fire, but there's this book where this person tells their story, and they are a prominent figure on Instagram, and they had to literally say on their Instagram, like, I don't want to talk about it. Please stop. I understand that me telling my story and telling my truth has positively impacted a lot of people, and they feel heard and they feel like they can talk to me about it, but I don't want to talk about it ever again. Like I have told it once, I wrote it down, I had the catharsis I needed, and you all DMing me about it makes me have to relive it, and I don't want to do that. And so I'm never going to answer any comments or any DMs about it because I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Exactly. You carry this emotional weight of everyone else who's experienced the same thing. And like we do gravitate to people who've experienced the same thing as us, and so it's natural. But I think Grace Tame has actually talked about this, about how, people will come up to her and tell her and reveal things to her and disclose what's happened to them. And she is just compounding on that. Like any woman who's experienced something or any person who's experienced something like that, it's compounded. Like while you kind of do gain this community of people and you know that you're not alone and all of this kind of stuff, it can be really compounding, and you're taking
hold all their stories as well.
Yeah, you're holding their trauma and their grief as well. So it's incredibly complex, and I think that's something that people really need to understand when they are talking about, they're only coming forward now because they can get a payout and all this kind of stuff. It's like, how do you think that a payout is going to fix emotional and physical trauma that's been carried for 30 years? Like, I don't understand that either. Like, who's going to come forward and be like, give me $1 million and I'll feel fine? Like, it's just unrealistic.
So
like,
I guess I kind of get, and I don't want to like, I hate the word devil's advocate or whatever, but I do want to try and like, I don't know, not even convince, but when you say, like a payout won't help, why would people admit that these things happen years after the fact?
It's probably a safety thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, years later, you may not be in the same position. You may not have the same risk levels associated to it. You may have changed companies. You may have established X, Y, Z. And 5 years down the track, you're in a position where you could come forward and not have your whole life stripped away from you.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like reclaiming your identity as well, like yourself. I think like why people would come forward now if it wasn't about getting a payout or something like that, or even if it was, I think it's that point of like they're in a safer place. Actually, some people aren't, but yes, like a lot of people are. They're out of this thing where it could have ruined their lives by coming forward. But yeah, like I think everyone can relate to carrying a secret around, carrying something around, and it's heavy. The weight of carrying something like that around is so heavy. And just imagine carrying that for 30 years and finally you get this opportunity where you can say, hang on, that happened to me too. And this person did this to me too. And you can kind of feel validated, I guess. Like you kind of reclaim your own story and you're not living in this shadow of this thing, this person did this to me, and you're not constantly in fear of that person anymore, I think, as well. Like I think there's a lot of that aspect. And I need to be clear, I'm not coming from a perspective of being a person that's experienced a trauma like that, but working with people who have and having personal experiences with people who have and studying it at uni as well. I guess we never actually talked about how I got into politics. But I've definitely educated myself a lot on this as well.
So you studied it?
So I went to uni to do a Bachelor of Arts because that was the classic, I think I should go to uni but I don't know what I want to do kind of degree.
Oh, yeah, I did the same thing.
So I had a double major of politics and psychology.
That's so cool.
So I did a lot of Australian politics and then a lot of kind of human rights and social justice focused things. So I guess my kind of social conscience is what has taken me in the path that I've gone down politically. But to come back to that very first question, that's how I got into politics.
Yeah.
This right here is where you're missing out on bonus content. If you want to catch this bonus content, all you have to do is support us on Patreon.
I'm interested in your perspective as well, about like, do you think it's, in terms of like action, we had a professor of law on the podcast, Rick Sarr. I don't know if you heard that episode, but he was on a billboard with Julia Gillard at one point. Like, he's run for like high office, like he's been amongst it. And he's like, everyone needs to join a political party. And I still haven't, like, I'll admit that. But do you think there's a point to that? Apparently he's like, that's all that gives you a voice. You need to join a political party. I'm like, okay. But...
I don't know if I can talk too much to that, like in terms of what works and what doesn't. I think there definitely are benefits to that in terms of getting your voice heard in the current system that exists.
Yeah.
And that
are you saying that we should dismantle the current system? I'm going to go grab my pickaxe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pitchforks, that's what it's called. I said pickaxe. I've been playing Minecraft. Sorry. Anyway.
I mean, I guess currently in the way that our system runs, that might be the best way for you to be heard in that instance. But I don't think there is a lot of kind of, what's the word? Draw. There's not really a draw card for young people to join a political party currently. I think that
why would we go ahead and rush to sign up for these organizations that have historically let us down?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really hard, I think, as well. I feel like I'm at a bit of an odd age now where I'm not a young person really technically anymore.
You are.
In the technical classification of what a young person is. But I don't see myself represented in the current leaders as well. And so it's a really weird kind of limbo position. And I'm just kind of craving that change in, I think, generational leadership. I think it will be a different time as younger people come into leadership. I don't doubt that. But
I know so many fucking stupid young people.
Oh, I know.
Like, how can I be hopeful?
I know.
No,
it's hard.
Fuck.
But yeah, I think it's tough. I don't know that I would particularly join a political party currently. I have family members that are part of like the Labor Party and things like that, and who've been really lifelong members. And definitely, you are in a position where you get to have a little bit more of a say. But I mean, to a certain degree, I guess. Yeah. You get to vote on who the people are and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's kind of beyond that point for a lot of people and a lot of younger people that the systems aren't working, and you aren't really going to change them from the inside with the current way that everything is. And it is going to take more. It's going to take some really strong progressive voices to change some things around. And I am hopeful that this upcoming generation will affect a little bit more change, but it also is hard to think it's hard not to think, is it too late?
It might be too late. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of, God, if you want to remain optimistic, just don't look up anything about the climate, because I've seen so many terrible articles about the climate recently, about point of no return, ice caps melting at a rate that we weren't even predicting, recently. And it's just like the cyclical effect has already begun.
Yeah. And it's hard too. Like, I've kind of entered this different stage of my life. Like, I got married this year, and everyone, is the second that you get married, is like, oh, when are you having kids? And it is like something that I want. It's something that my husband and I want, to have a family, but it's really hard to currently justify bringing a life into the world, like, without knowing what that world's going to be like for them in 50 years.
It's almost, I've heard people talk about it like it's an ethical dilemma to actually have a child, which is that's hard to hear.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard to kind of rationalize. Yeah, and I mean, I guess there are options out there in terms of, you know, adoption and things like that for children that don't currently have families, but that's difficult. That's a difficult process anyway. So it's tough. Sorry, that's absolutely no positive, helpful tips for anyone who's feeling
How are you feeling now, Emily? Is that better?
Sam and M sold hope.
Fuck you.
Oh man.
Let's move it on.
No, but can I may not be able to offer a solution, but I may be able to identify some problems, and it's not going to fix anything. But I think in this book I have sitting here that I've already recommended on this podcast, but it's called Humankind, A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman, and it is about hope, and it is actually quite inspirational. But
it's my next book that I'm reading.
Please, yeah. One of the recommendations in the back, there's a list of 10 things that you should do, right? And one of them is do not watch the news. And I think currently every feed
that we conferences,
but you do take in news from any feed that you're watching. It's going to have current events. It's going to have pop culture. It's going to have if you're not selecting the information that you're taking in, I think that's almost definitely going to be a detriment to your mental health, because every single feed that you take in is going to be engagement focused as the number one priority, and it's going to fuck with your emotions, because it's going to be the saddest thing ever followed by the most exciting thing ever followed by the most depressing thing ever to keep you hooked on the screen. But when you're in lockdown, what are you going to do? Like, I want to be engaged. I don't want to be bored. I don't want to be left alone with my thoughts. So I'm saying this is probably a huge part of this problem. I don't have a solution. Like, I'm going to keep doing it. But I think being selective with your news source is important anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It sounds like a really good idea when you say it like that. And then I think about how I might do that, and I want to quit.
I know. I can't imagine not being on a device. Like, and it's truly is an avoidance thing. Like, I am uncomfortable with my own thoughts at the moment, and I need to have something to stimulate, and it's like just fueling this fire. And even if when you don't think it's happening, like, I'll scroll on TikTok and just be like, oh yeah, this is like some funny video. And in reality, it's just like bringing up all these things of, you know, Grandpa Kev coming to save the day. It's tough. It's hard. Yay.
And on that note, do you have a problem for us to solve, Paris?
I do. Now, I did say before we started that I thought that this might be up your alley, Emily. And that is because it is soup related.
Okay.
Why are you sad?
Because I can't have soup anymore.
What?
No.
It's a processed food, and I'm not allowed to eat anything that's already been broken down. But continue. I love soup. I've had it a lot. We can move through this.
Okay. I apologize for bringing up that
that's fine.
Little bit of trauma there. But so I am studying commercial cookery at TAFE, and that's currently online too, which is a real bummer because it's a practical subject and it's dry as hell for 8 hours on a computer.
The only good thing about learning is cooking, because you get to eat.
Yeah, and I get to like actually do the physical thing. But we do have practical homework, and my homework this week, because our new unit is soups, stocks and sauces, is to make a soup. And my problem is that I don't know which one to make, because I think our teacher is like having
Emily's raising her hand.
I'm ready.
I think it's going to be like this kind of a little bit MasterChef-y vibe. I mean, like ick, but also funny when you're in lockdown. Like, I think that we have to take photos of the process, and like I am by nature always wanting to be a bit of a teacher's pet, so I want to do well. What soup should I make?
Okay. So there's this soup that I've been wanting to make for like 5 years now, since I bought the cookbook, and I just haven't made it. And now I can't eat any of the things that are in it, especially the part that makes it a soup. But I'm not even 100% sure if I'm getting this right, but I'm pretty sure it's leek, apple and thyme soup. And it just looks so good. The picture looks amazing. I will send you the recipe. I've got it in a cookbook upstairs.
Yes.
But just the apple and thyme like mix makes it sound so... It might be like rosemary apple and thyme or like potato apple and thyme, something like that. But, it looks so good. And I've been craving it. I don't know how I would crave it because I've never had it. But I've craved it for a long time. So that's my soup pick for you.
I love that. That sounds like a great option.
I will send you the recipe as soon as I go back upstairs.
I'm a notorious soup hater because reasons, and that sounds good to me. I want to try that soup.
It sounds like it has chunks in it, and I think chunks help people who don't like soup.
Yeah, the reason I don't like soup is because it's not a real meal. Like, I can't ever feel fully satisfied with it. I will love a soup if it's an appetizer.
I once drank a litre of tomato soup out of the bowl.
Okay, but you and tomatoes is a different story.
That's very true, but it's a meal if you eat a litre of it. Yeah. Trust me.
I feel like soup hating, though, is a classic Wallis trait, though, because
it is.
Your sister, Jackie, does not enjoy soup either for the exact same reason that it is not filling.
It's not. I want to eat. Like, if I'm eating, I want to... And that's the thing. It's a drink, too. Like, don't make me drink something with a spoon. Can you... Anyway.
Do you ever feel that way about smoothies, though? Sometimes I have a smoothie for breakfast and I'm like, I need to eat something or I'm not going to feel like I've eaten anything.
Yeah, I get that vibe.
Yep. Yeah, similar argument. But look, soup has its place. I am a soup hater because if I'm ever served soup as a meal, I'm going to be angry about it. And that's probably where it's irrational. But anyway, that soup does sound delicious.
Yeah, I will post on Instagram
really
and I'll send you the recipe because I want it really bad and then I can live through you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have to take photos and document the process apparently, so I'll send that through.
Oh, brilliant! And can I say to our listeners as well, one of my my favorite qualities about your entire family is your delicious food prowess. I was so excited for your wedding because I was like, oh man, they would just make the best food. I'm so I'm so keen. It truly was. It was so good. I was not let down.
It was one of the only, if not the only thing I cared about my wedding, let's be real.
Oh, man.
I remember people saying what do you want your wedding to be? And all I would say is really good food and a shit ton of fairy lights. And I think we had both. So
hell yeah, you did.
Did you get to eat the food?
I did, actually. Initially, we weren't going to have a bridal table. This is not interesting for anyone, by the way, but I'm glad we did because it kind of separates you and you get time to eat. And actually the Wallis Wells family were very instrumental in allowing us to eat because I have photographs of Jess spooning us our pasta and everything. So there was a guardian angel of food.
I am in no way getting married anytime soon, but I had that conversation with my mum the other day and I was just like, at my wedding, you have one role and one role only, and that is to make sure I eat something.
Yes.
And I also remember at my 21st, I was had way too many drinks, hadn't eaten nearly enough food, and I went to Nona, Jenny, and Mum and just went, Mums, make me eat something. You're all in charge of making me eat dinner.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was very effective.
Yes.
They locked me inside. It was great.
But yes, thank you. It is something that I'm very passionate about thanks to my dad. He started off my love of food, and it only took me 10 years to do the course that I wanted to do when I was 18, but finally doing it.
Hey, better late than never.
Shall we do recommendations?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Paris, do you want to kick us off with a recommendation?
Sure. My recommendation is what I mentioned before, is the show on ABC called Misrepresented. It was written and created by Annabelle Crabb, who is just a wonderful journalist. And yeah, it's got great insights to the journey of being a female politician in Australia. And it's really interesting as well because you do get to see the experiences from kind of across the political divide. And it's very interesting to see that these women have experienced very similar things, but the way that they talk about them is really different depending on which political party they're coming from. And hearing those differences is really interesting. And yeah, it was just great. It made me cry, but it also made me feel empowered and print out Julia Gillard's misogyny speech in a little artwork and frame it on my wall. So
I love it. And can I say how much, like, I don't normally enjoy documentaries at all, but it is very inspiring. And I really appreciate, I immediately, like, you told me about it and I just started watching it straight away. And then I was already at the end of the second episode before I had to go and do something else. But it's really, really good. And all the different perspectives. The fact, is it produced completely by women as well? Did you say?
I'm not too sure about the production, actually.
But the director is female. Because you could,
as far as I'm aware,
there are shots and things that, like, I noticed, like, immediately there's this shot of, like, women, and it's just, it makes them look really powerful, which is something that I immediately was aware that I had never seen something like that shown to me in media before. It was like politicians, they're all women. I was just, like, intimidated by all of them. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen on the screen.
Yeah, like a very, very powerful portrayal of
just
of
like
women.
The shot, it was angled up. It was the lighting was very, like, almost like it was dark, and it was just showing them in a way that you would look almost at like a villain, like a male villain in like or like Winston Churchill would be portrayed this way. And it was all these powerful women, and I just went, that's fucking cool as. Like, I love that.
Yeah, it's like a kind of like a superhero montage sort of vibe where, like, they're individually there and you see them in this lighting and they're really powerful, and it's really great. And no matter what side of politics that you're on, I think anyone can kind of resonate with it. And there's some really interesting things that they touch on, and I could talk for hours about it, let's be real.
I would love to talk to you about it for hours also, because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Did you find it? Find your recommendation?
Yeah.
What is it?
So it is a Shameless podcast episode from July last year where they interviewed Julia Gillard. It's just called In Conversation, Julia Gillard. And it was a long time ago that I listened to it, but I remember the way that she talks about her time in office and the way she was treated. And I remember being really, really touched by it and really, like, it was just really, really powerful. So I'm going to recommend that, even though it's from a while ago.
Yeah, for sure. I did listen to that and it is very good.
Yeah.
I want to read co-recommend that.
Yeah. She's written a book with a few other women in leadership across sort of the globe, and I haven't read it, and I really want to. I want to recommend it, but, like, I haven't read it, so I can't. But I'll leave it linked below if anybody's curious.
Yeah.
You're up, Sam.
Hey?
You're up.
Okay. I'm going to stick with the Lorde song that came out today. I'm also going to say, today we're not airing this today, but so I should probably tell you what it is. It's not here. Have I not? Oh, anyway, it's called Stoned at the Nail Salon. Have you guys heard it yet?
I haven't.
Nope.
It reminds me of Sufjan Stevens, weirdly, which is not what you would think of when you heard a Lorde song at all. And I don't know if anyone's going to agree with me, but I was talking to a mate about it and he was like, I almost said that, but I deleted it because it sounds crazy. And I was like, it does, but it has some kind of vibe to it. It's like, it's a sad Lorde song, but it is really good. I really liked it. So yeah.
Cool.
Stoned at the Nail Salon. Nice. Also, if you're not already, you should sign up to her email list because she writes, like, really long blog posts to her fans, and it's brilliant. They're really funny.
On that.
Yeah,
because she did. I think I saw something that there is a resurgence of her Instagram where she rates onion rings.
Yes, I love it.
I mean, she is a queen.
I'll just read an excerpt from the very beginning. She goes, "Hello, my mates. I hope you're doing good out there. I've just gotten back from a crazy, amazing shoot in the middle of nowhere that I can't tell you anything about yet. Surprise, surprise, but that you'll see soon, and I'll put money on this. Shit your pants over." So I was like, I love her. She just seems so genuine for such a massive pop star. And she talks about how weird pop star life is. And she's like how she has to become the embodiment of her work. And so, I don't know, she just seems so genuine for what she is. It's so cool. Love her.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen to that song.
Well, thank you so much for chatting to us, Paris. This has been really fun. really like passionate in a lot of different areas that I wasn't expecting.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I love the amount of passion you bring to any topic, and I've been wanting to have any kind of conversation with you on the podcast for such a long time. And thank you for getting me into politics and, yeah, for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I feel very honoured to be on, and I just love talking about shit, so thanks.
Yeah, same.
Nice.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems. If you liked today's episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. The music is by The Vinyl Press. And that's all that I have to say.
The music is clearly loud in your headphones because you are yelling. No! Share this with your